if you drink this, it'll cure cancer. Can people make this kind of claim on Facebook? Hi, my name is Chris and this is Oversight Examined, where we look at the decisions of Facebook's Oversight Board to see what we can learn about content moderation. Today we're looking at the difference between misinformation, disinformation, uninformed opinion and legitimate debate, particularly with regards to information about COVID-19 during the recent pandemic. And this case is unusual because it was actually referred by Facebook themselves to the board because Mark Zuckerberg just didn't know what to do. So what happened? Well, in 2020, in October, a group of people in France were discussing which drugs you can use to treat COVID. This was a big group. There were 500,000 members. And one of them was arguing, well, the government has approved this drug, remdesivir. Why do they not approve these drugs, hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin? He said, what have we got to lose? They're harmless anyway. And then Facebook came along and deleted the post because they said it contributed to the risk of imminent physical harm. Maybe. They weren't really very sure. It was kind of what do you think? And they referred it to the Oversight Board to get a final ruling from them. So the big issue here is, how do you balance freedom of speech against the need to protect people? So we'll look at freedom of speech first. Now, if you want to cure a disease, you need science, and science is all about asking questions, including questioning authority. Now, for example, doctors didn't used to wash their hands. They said it didn't make sense that you would have to do that. And then I can remember days when doctors believed that stomach ulcers were the result of eating spicy food and too much coffee. Now we know that it's caused by bacteria and it's treated with simple antibiotics. So we move forward by asking questions, by trying new things, conducting experiments, figuring out what works and what doesn't. There can't be just one truth, one universal truth that everybody has to follow. Now, in this case, somebody is questioning government policy. He's arguing about strategy. He's not advocating that people should use bleach to treat COVID. He's talking about regulated drugs that you can only get from a doctor, not over the counter. Now, he may be uninformed, but we have to ask, well, where is the harm? And is that harm imminent? And balancing this, we have the need to protect people. Now, if you go around claiming that there is a cure for a disease, well, that might encourage people to not follow the health advice that's being given. There's a lot of people out there who believe that the COVID restrictions were all bullshit, and this kind of claim feeds into that narrative, and it empowers them to take risky behavior, to do things which might endanger other people as well as themselves. So Facebook has written various different policies and advisories at different times regarding COVID. And one of them talks about the potential to contribute to real world harm. A little bit later, they talk about misinformation which contributes to the risk of imminent harm. And then again, somewhere else, they talk about misinformation and unverifiable rumors. So quite a lot of different policies to bear in mind there. So Facebook seems to be following the precautionary principle. They're being very, very careful to avoid any risk, any possibility of liability for themselves as well. And let's not forget that this post won't only be seen in France, where these drugs are regulated. There are many countries out there where people speak French, but they don't have the same regulations and the same strict controls. So Facebook is being very careful not to let anybody spread this message that there's a cure for COVID and you just have to go and buy these drugs. So let's look at a few criticisms of what we've seen here. And the first obvious one is it's really not clear what Facebook's policy is around COVID. There's this incoherent, this patchwork of different statements in different places, which make it very difficult for anybody to really know what they can say and what they can't. It's like the old saying about if you ask a committee to design a horse, then you end up with a camel. Well, we're 6 months into this process at this point, and if Facebook haven't got the rules and regulations together yet, so it's all a mess. And the next criticism is that the rules that we see are very poorly written as well. They talk about the potential to and contributing to and the risk of and imminence and all of these weasel words. They make it very difficult to pin something down and say, okay, this is violating and this not. It's too subjective. Which leads me to the last question. What is misinformation anyway? They haven't even defined what that is. And throughout this case, we're seeing woolly language, things that are open to misinterpretation. And that makes it all very difficult for anybody to do content moderation effectively and consistently. So it's really good to see the Oversight Board getting involved and adding a little bit of clarity maybe. So what was the decision? Well, the board ruled that you can't delete something that is just a critique of government policy. You need to show that it does contribute to the risk and that there is a risk of harm and that that risk is imminent. So they're asking for a much higher standard of proof. They're prioritizing free speech over the need to protect people. They've also issued a policy advisory to Facebook telling them to clarify their rules, put them all together, make everything simpler and more understandable for the general public and by extension also for the content moderators who have to implement those rules. And that's good. They've also asked for more examples, more detail, more work, more of the same as well as better. So I'm a little bit dubious about that one. But overall, I think I agree with them. And they've gone on to say that Facebook needs to have a range of possible responses other than just ignoring it or deleting it. They're suggesting there needs to be other options to try and move the conversation along more constructively. And they've asked for more transparency from Facebook about this kind of stuff, like what's going on, how many of these posts are there, how are they being treated, and so forth. So this is good. This is all helpful insights. And then finally, they've gone on to say that Facebook needs to clarify how Facebook decides what is a fact and what is somebody's opinion and what is a legitimate inquiry about the facts and opinions and so forth, to try and clarify how they make their decisions. So there we go. That was a pretty straightforward case on the face of it. I think the discussions were quite interesting. We had a little chat here about, like, what is your opinion? What do you think? And actually we found it difficult to reach a final conclusion. So I'd be interested to hear what you think. You can get down in the comments section below. Give us your opinion. Also give us a like and a subscribe while you're down there. And I'm going to go off and research the next one, and I'll see you next week. Cheers. One more thing, I want to talk very briefly about the user submissions. Now, when these cases are published, the board asks the general public to have their say, to contribute their ideas and suggestions. In this case, there were 8 submissions from the general public, and 4 of those were from the United States. And again, we're seeing that the debate and the discussion is dominated by one country and one set of values on global issues. So I do want to encourage more people to have their say. Also, the board has said that they are publishing the public comments. They're going to share them so that everybody else can see what everybody else has said, which is great. It's very transparent, wonderful. But guys, I can't find those publications anywhere. I don't know what was said. So it would be really great if we could just be a little bit more clued up with managing the website and ensuring that these public statements are then shared with everybody. Thank you.